Israel has committed, as we were saying, to daily pauses in military operations in parts of Gaza from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. local time. The pause, which was almost immediately broken, as Hind has reported and Hani has reported, applies to these three areas: Gaza City, Deir al-Balah, al-Mawasi. Israel has deemed the rest of the Strip a dangerous combat zone. So all the red on your map is a no-go area. Gaza City was hit by Israeli strikes on Sunday, despite the pause already coming into effect. That was 1 hour into the pause. Last Sunday, Israel launched a week-long ground offensive into Deir al-Balah, where tanks were deployed into civilian areas. Although the Israeli military has declared al-Mawasi a safe evacuation zone, it regularly attacks al-Mawasi, killing Palestinian families sheltering in makeshift tents. Let's bring in Sam Rose, acting director of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees in Gaza, that's UNRWA, which Israel officially banned last year. He joins us from Oxford in the UK. So, Sam, Israel cut off entirely the tap of aid into the Gaza Strip. This was back in March, total blockade. And then Israel sought to control the delivery of aid with the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. We know what happened there. Many people were killed as they went daily to try and get food from the GHF. And now Israel is reopening the door ever so slightly to actors like the UN bringing aid. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And you've described it well. I mean, this has clearly been part of an approach of manufactured starvation over several months. Firstly, as you say, you limit the supply of aid coming in, or you completely block it. Secondly, you criticize the organizations whose job it is to provide that aid, the UN organizations, whose, of course, job is made far more difficult, both by the controls that Israel imposes on us, but also by the limited supply, which means, as your correspondent said, that aid supplies just get looted. And then the next stage of this is to frame humanitarian aid itself as part of the problem. And that's the dynamic that we've been facing over the past few weeks, during which countless children have died of malnutrition, countless more, tens of thousands more, face life-changing illnesses and conditions in terms of their cognitive ability, in terms of their physical development, and more people have been bombed to smithereens. So look, we very much welcome these steps, these initial steps to increase the flow of aid. They're not enough. They need to be expanded, and they need to be sustained, and they need to be accompanied by a ceasefire, because that's the only thing that's going to stabilize conditions for hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of desperate people in Gaza.
We need to talk about Palestinians and the aids that they need to get. But one last quick one on UNRWA, because this does matter too. Israel, as we said, banned UNRWA, made UNRWA illegal. This is an Israeli law last year. And now it does seem that UNRWA is once again at the heart of delivering aid to Gaza. How does that work?
We are prevented from bringing our supplies into the Gaza Strip right now. I, as an international staff member, am not able to be present. Those two factors mean that the overall aid effort in Gaza to save the lives of starving people is undermined. But it's not just distributions that matter. It's key services, and it's those services that UNRWA remains at the absolute heart of across the Gaza Strip. Every day we have 11,000 staff facing major risks, providing healthcare, 15,000 health consultations every day, water to 250,000 people every day, garbage collection for 300,000 people every day. We have the teams, we have the structures, we have the expertise, the infrastructure, and as somebody who was interviewed said, we have the community acceptance and the community trust to get this done. We are part of the solution to this, and we have to be allowed to do our jobs. UNRWA alone has enough food outside of Gaza to feed people for 3 months. That food needs to be able to get into Gaza, and we need to be allowed to distribute it safely. There's too much at stake to not allow us to do that. The Israeli laws do not impact on our ability to distribute supplies inside of Gaza. And we call on member states that have influence in these matters to allow us to get on and do our jobs. Things have been allowed to carry on for too long, and they've reached such a desperate state now. We need to be able to get on with this.
The UN has said it's got thousands of trucks of food and medicine waiting just outside Gaza, waiting to go in. You've just touched on that. So with Israel now saying that they're opening up designated routes for the aid to come in, how much aid are we talking about? Do you have a number? Do you have a cap?
No, I mean, what we're able to bring in depends on the conditions in which we are able to work. We showed during the ceasefire that we can bring in 500, 600 trucks a day. In the conditions that we're operating now, the numbers will be far lower than that, but there'll be more than we were able to bring in, but not enough to fend off and reverse these horrific trends of starvation and malnutrition amongst children. And we also have to remember that it's not just food trucks, it's not flour that's going to save children's lives. These children are so desperately ill now, they need specialized treatment. They need parents who are able to take them for that treatment in health clinics, who are able to do that because they're not living in fear of constant bombardment. They're not constantly facing displacement and moving from one place to another. So yeah, this is a start. More needs to be done. The UN system, the humanitarian community at large is able to deliver in dignity and in safety at scale. We've shown this countless times over the past 20 months and indeed over the past 75 years. We are ready, able, and willing to do it, and we need to be allowed to do our jobs.
Sam, you're raising something very important that I want to highlight for our viewers. The people who have been the worst impacted by the hunger crisis. My understanding from doing these interviews is that you can't just turn on the tap of food and expect everybody to be okay again. Some people may be past the point where they can be saved.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the children, the images of the children that we're seeing now on our screens, horrific, harrowing images that we're seeing. This is a result of weeks and weeks of limited calories and limited nutrients. These children have no reserves of fat in their bodies. They have muscles that have started to waste away. They have organs that are weakened. They're very, very prone to infection. Food trucks will not solve this. Children need specialized treatment in clinics. They need access to healthcare. They need access to clean water, and they need a break from the bombardments and the hell that they've been living through that has severely degraded well-being and immune systems. And we know from experience that it takes several weeks to stabilize conditions of young children who are so ill. And it's only after a few weeks of this that their bodies will start to repair. So major risks of more children dying and of others facing lifelong consequences as a result of this. And it's not just the children, it's the women who are giving birth to these children. It's the families who are looking after these children. If they're living in immediate fear of their lives because of bombardment, because of displacement, then their ability to take care of their young ones is, of course, further limited.
Sam, just before I let you go, what is on your immediate radar right now for the next 10 hours with this window of a humanitarian pause and these designated routes? You know, it started just now, 10 a.m. local time in Gaza, ends in 10 hours. What's on your radar right now for the next 10 hours?
Is to get enough supplies into Gaza that we can start pushing out food to those who need it most. Most of all is to get that food out. And if UNRWA can be involved in that, we have the systems, we have the distribution mechanisms to reach people in need first. And I hope, above all, that when we come on this show tomorrow morning, we're not talking of more people that have been killed. We're talking of people that have been reached with food, reached with medicine, that have had a night's rest after 22 months of this. And then that gives us something that we can build on, because as I said, it's going to take days and weeks to stabilize the situation and give people what they need. We've had families that don't know what a proper meal is, children that have never had a proper meal because they've been living through this misery for so long. That's what we need to bring back to people, and we'll do everything that we can over the next day and over the next days to get those supplies in and out to the people. But we need to be allowed to work. This is a start, but it's something that we need to be able to build on in good faith, and then set the tracks for a ceasefire, because otherwise we will slide back into this, and I'll be here again in a few months, sadly, talking to you about the same situation that we could have prevented, or that the world rather could have prevented.
Sam Rose, Acting Director of UNRWA, thank you very much for joining us on the Al Jazeera NewsHour.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.